Okay, greetings everyone. My name is Neo and I'm here to share some info with the people. All right, welcome to Committed Relationships and Spiritual Activity Show and YouTube channel. I truly appreciate you tuning into the show. And my name is Neo. And what we're going to do today in this episode is speak about adulthood. What is it? Now, throughout my years of studying, observing, and investigating relationships as a human relationship anatomist, or I'll just say relationship anatomist, that's what I usually say. And I've been doing this for many, many years. I have come to realize that there are very few people who have actually a clear comprehension of what adulthood is and also have actually reached adulthood. And let me come to the definition of adulthood, my own definition of it. And this is coming from the spiritual knowing and also, I say mostly spiritual knowing and also observing and investigating what's been going on for years. Now, adulthood is the stage after your adolescent stage. That is your teenage stage. And however, it doesn't necessarily have to be after your teenage stage. If your parents have done their job adequately, or if a person's parents has done their job adequately to develop their child psychologically and into maturity, the child between 14 and 18 years of age can actually be an adult doing things on their own, as long as they have psychologically reached an adequate level of maturity. However, as I said in many of my other episodes, that here in America, the society programs people to delay the child's maturity. That's why there's a lot of people who do not mature until they're in their 30s or later, and some not at all, because there's still some 50, 60, and 70-year-old immature psychologically children. And there's a lot of psychologically children here in America. They're grown-up children. That's one of my previous videos. That's what I call it, grown-up children. So go check that video out too. I explain what grown-up children are. That's what a lot of people are these days. And here in America, the society teaches people that material possessions equates adulthood. Material possessions is an aspect of adulthood because there's certain materials that you have to have, certain possessions minimum that you have to have to a certain extent. But adulthood is more of a psychological aspect, because a person can have a house and a car and a good job, but still be immature. But then you can have a 14 to 18-year-old or 21-year-old who still lives at home with their mom or parents or sisters or family, but they're on a more adequate level psychologically as far as maturity and adulthood, and they don't have their own car, they don't have a job or even money. They can still be psychologically mature. And the average person would not really comprehend this because they didn't do their own personal development work and really analyzed and studied what true maturity is. And that's why a lot of people run into these relationships with immature people because they don't really know what maturity is. And our society here in America does not display true maturity often. It might be flashes and fragmented pieces of maturity, but it doesn't want the influencers does not want to display true maturity because it would make it more difficult for their own control as far as the influencers slash controllers of this society. They want to keep this American society and the people of it, they want to keep it fucked up. That's what I'm gonna say, to keep it fucked up. And that's exactly what a lot of people here, they're fucked up in the head. And that's the top reason why their relationships are not working well. It's not working well at all. It's in the mind. So adulthood is that stage after the teenage stage, and where you're supposed to be able to think wisely as an adult. But that's once you reach the maturity level psychologically. Once you reach that maturity level, that adequate level maturity psychologically, then you can start thinking on your own as far as, okay, I can go and do this with this type of person and get into this kind of relationship with them. I can go and get my own job and be responsible for my overall behavior and take true accountability while I have this job, and be able to maintain this job as long as possible, instead of just getting angry at what someone said or did to me and then just quit. That part is the immaturity, when people just quit because somebody said something said something to them. And believe it or not, there's a lot of people that quit jobs off of petty stuff. The pettiness, that's not adulthood. Adulthood is when you're also a mature individual, where you can resist the temptation to lash out at someone due to their immaturity or something that they said that was really, really immature and petty. The stuff like that just bounces off of a mature adult. It doesn't even faze them to even try to lash back at the individual because they know that the individual is already on an immature level. So there's no need to lash back at them. And with me maturing and doing my personal development work, I realized that even so-called adults who people consider themselves an adult age-wise, if they have not reached psychological maturity, I know that I gotta sort of treat them like a child as far as tolerating their immaturity and just avoid the temptation to lash back out of them, at them. Because it's the same thing I do with my mother and a lot of my family members. I know that a large portion of them are still on an immature level. So the things that they say to me that might be considered negative, I just allow it to bounce off of me, because it's no need to go crazy, because they don't know what's really going on with them psychologically. Even if they think they know, they still haven't tried to do anything to resolve their childhood issues and overall unresolved issues in general. So these issues are sabotaging their overall behavior. And majority of my family and people in general, they don't realize it. And that's one of the major reasons why me personally, I keep clear of most people, and I'm slow to jump into relationships with most people, because they have not done their personal development work and even attempted to resolve their unresolved issues. So as I said before in a variety of my recordings, that unresolved issues actually sabotages relationships. And that's the biggest thing that's been going on with a lot of people in relationships. And most people have not sat down and figured this out. And it's just a cycle over and over again with these breakups in these relationships. So it's really, really ridiculous. And that's a good sign that tells you that the average person has not reached adulthood yet. Because adulthood, you become highly accountable of self, highly accountable and responsible of self. There's very little to no blame from an individual who has reached true adulthood, mature adulthood. And they take responsibility of themselves, and they it's easy for them to do self-reflection because they're aware of their own ego, and they know how to silence and bypass their own ego. That allows them to take responsibility and focus on the development of themselves and resolving whatever issue that they may have within any given situation, any given moment. Right. So that's one major aspect of adulthood. And that's one major aspect that very few people truly comprehend. And that's been going on for many, many years. And that's why a lot of people still are not having successful and meaningful relationships in general with people within their own life. Let me see what else I can give an example of adulthood. So adulthood in general is the same thing as maturity. It's a psychological aspect, much more than a material possession aspect. And that's where people really get things messed up. Like, for example, there is a 21-year-old. Say, for example, I can meet a 21-year-old female and get along with her much more because I know that she has matured much more than a 31-year-old. And a 31-year-old is the one that has the car, she has the house, she has the money to take care of herself, and she's independent. And the American society has this belief and gets people to believe, it's the propaganda that the 31-year-old with that type of lifestyle and those material possessions and the things that she has set for her, they get people to believe that that's adulthood. That's only an aspect of adulthood. But then again, you have the 21-year-old who already knows how to bypass and silence her ego. She's mature to the point where she has clear communication. She listens very, very well, very responsible and accountable for her own actions. And she avoids blaming other people for the things that she has done or did. And she's actually focusing on her personal development work. And she wants to consistently improve herself rather than just sitting and being satisfied with the way that she is and not seeking to evolve herself. Because there's a lot of people who have reached adulthood and they graduated from high school, or from college, and they think that, okay, well, I don't have to learn anymore, and that's it. And that's how a lot of parents are also. They think that once they have their children, that learning about life stops. And that's why a lot of people literally get older faster physically, because the brain says, okay, well, there's nothing else to learn. This person is not learning, so it's time to start dying because there's nothing to work on. Because your brain can actually evolve as long as the person keeps seeking out knowledge. Knowledge is actually information that has been unknown to an individual. Just because a person consistently hears something over and over again, that's not knowledge. Knowledge is something that's totally new from what the individual has heard and or seen before. And me, even though I have been studying relationships for many years, investigating them for many years, there's still a lot of new things that I'm learning about relationships. And that's why a few years ago, I came to the conclusion that relationships is a huge mechanism that has so many tiny parts that the average person hasn't even tapped into and has become aware of the major basics of relationships. And most people, they follow their society standards of relationships rather than actually coming to their own conclusions after analyzing and investigating relationships. So me, I started my journey based off of when I realized I didn't know what the heck I was doing after after a breakup with a woman years ago. And then that's when I started my journey. And I did all of this studying for myself. But then after a while, the spirit came through, my spiritual self came through and said, look, you have all of this relationship insight. It's time for you to start sharing it with others. So that's what I've been doing for the past few years for now. So, all right, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. That is my definition of adulthood. And I want to make it clear that just because a person has the material possessions of an adult does not mean that they reached adulthood psychologically. And if I speak to anyone, I can tell you, I can point out to you which one has reached adulthood psychologically. So when you see these people that have these things, they have the car, they have the money, they have the job, and they say that they're ready for a relationship, I'm telling you, based on my information that I have received regarding relationships and analysis, very few people are actually ready for a committed romantic relationship, let alone a friendship, because they still don't know how to control themselves and their own behavior, and they still allow their unresolved issues to sabotage their relationships, and they're completely oblivious to their unresolved issues. Even if and what's been going on for years, even when people know that they have psychological issues, they just rather deal with them rather than resolve them. There is a difference. If you are an adult and you claim to be a mature adult, then it is your responsibility to resolve your unresolved issues rather than just sit there and deal with them. And you know that you talk too much. You know that you get angry easily. You know that you get too anxious over silly stuff, petty stuff. All of these things result from your childhood, one or more things, one or more experiences from your childhood and or previous relationship experiences, even in high school or college, or also even in the grade school. There's so many instances that your not so good behavior results from one or more of your past experiences. So that's where personal development comes into work. Your self-reflection, self-analysis, and self-development. All right. Thank you very much for listening. Until next time. Also, you can email me at CommittedRelationships@gmail.com. It will be in the description, and also other things will be in the description. So check that out too.